My name's Paige Morris. I am the student representative for the Glass Art Society. For those of you who are new to GAS, we are a nonprofit international organization with the mission to encourage excellence, to advance education, to promote the appreciation and development of the glass arts, and to support the worldwide community of artists who work with glass. We offer a variety of opportunities to connect and learn from one another, and in 2020, we made the decision to invest in virtual programs for a growing glass community. One of those programs is the GAS Student Meetup. This program is held monthly for glass students across the world and in different stages of their glass education, and is meant to share ideas and build community. Before we get the program started, there are a few online community practices to review. As this space is meant to build community, we ask that everyone be respectful. Make sure your name appears on the screen, and if you are comfortable and safe to do so, please list your pronouns. Also, we ask that you stay muted unless you have a question or we're having a discussion, as this can help minimize background audio noise. Please keep in mind that this program will be recorded and then shared on the GAS YouTube channel. And with all of that out of the way, welcome. This is our final GAS student meetup for this fiscal year. So we're kind of reviewing the Glass Art Society annual conference, the virtual conference this year. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we might have coming in the future. We'll be doing some planning this summer. So to kind of start, I'm just curious, I think all of you are newcomers, so welcome. This is actually kind of a small group. Sometimes that's really nice. But to start, did any of you attend the virtual conference? Yeah? Well, if you feel comfortable, was there anything in particular that you joined in or were a participant in? Did you watch any of the content? I can't hear, or is that just me?
No, I can't hear her either.
We can't hear you, Liz.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I went to a lot of the live streamed events, and what was the hook and sinker for me attending the conference this year was the portfolio reviews.
Oh, cool. Did you do a portfolio review?
Yeah, I did it with Now Yamamoto. Yeah.
Well, we actually had Now as a presenter a couple months back. She talked about visas and studying in the US. It was really wonderful to have her on. Cool.
Yeah.
Did anyone else join the conference or no?
I'm biased because I am the programs manager. If we haven't already met, my name is Jenna. Hi. And then Liz, I know we've met because of the portfolio review. And I'm glad you all are here. And it was a really fun 2021 virtual experience with all the glitches that technology has. We're glad to meet some of you, and hopefully we can see you all in Tacoma. We're already full steam ahead. Proposals just opened yesterday, and I do quickly want to just drop that link in there for you all to explore. There's a 6-week period that we have proposals open, and we really do welcome anyone and all to apply to present. We actually also it's either the details about presenting or how to write a proposal. We're really interested in getting more students involved and having your voices heard. So, embrace the theme and select focus areas. Yes, I'm orienting myself as I speak. So under that select focus area, just halfway down the page on the website, there is actually a whole category that is just student interests. So if you want to build your resume or CV or just get more exposure, this would be a really great way to do that. And if you have any questions about presenting or any of that, both Paige and I have been a part of GAS for a while now, so can walk you through that process.
Yeah, and we did actually have a couple students submit proposals that were accepted, and they did, I believe, some pre-recorded presentations. I'm trying to remember all who. I know Jacob Wilcox from Alfred University did a neon demo, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, that one was really cool, actually. If you all haven't seen it, you should.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Let's see. I actually, so as the student representative too, one of the things that we started besides this programming is from here on out, we're actually going to be having a student-led panel on GAS conferences. So we did a student panel, the first one ever for this virtual one. And I invited 3 individuals to chat with me about business practices and what that looks like in their different universities. And we had May from Toyama, who they didn't really have any sort of business practices as like a curriculum. And then Stephanie, who I forget the name of her, oh, she's at Palomar. Yeah, Palomar College. And she spoke about her experience with business practices, which actually was a class led by a curator, I think a gallerist. And then Bree Glusick, who is a grad student at OSU right now. So Bree kind of talked about these two having business practices in undergrad and in graduate school, and how it how that experience has like varied and been the same. So that's another recorded presentation that's still available if you have access. Cool. We could also screen something. It's such a small group. Is there anything that comes to mind that people were like, oh, I wanted to see this, but I didn't have the opportunity? There's a couple things on my docket that I feel like would be appropriate to share, including like what is it? One of the lectures from the Sachs emerging artists, which is like a pretty it's a pretty decent award. I don't know all the specifics, maybe Jenna can help me, but it's one that you have to be nominated for to even apply. So it's a pretty selective process. And since 2020 got put on hold because of the pandemic, there are actually videos from the 2020 Sachs Emerging Artists and the 2021 Sachs Emerging Artists. So there's a good breadth of people to view.
Yeah, I think that either of those would be really great. I'm curious to hear if anyone has any questions about either virtual 2021 and that whole experience before we start maybe watching something.
You can also type something in the chat box too, if that's more comfortable.
I haven't had a chance to look at any of the 2021. I went to the whole virtual 2020, and this year it's just been a bit of a busy. So I didn't make time to go in and look and see what was available for that. So I'm pretty much open to whatever is possible to share.
Great. I say we go for one of the Sachs winners, because also just with the timing, I think that would work well.
Cool. Let me see if I can share my screen because I have it up. Okay, this always confuses me. This is my actual screen. I don't know why. All right, let's see if this works. I might have to take my headphones out. Let me know what you are hearing, if you're hearing anything. Are you guys hearing that?
Not yet. Sometimes
No.
if you, right when you begin to share your screen, there's a little button that says also share audio that you have to click. Like you'd have to stop sharing, and then when you begin sharing again, then there's a little button in the bottom left for me. But
I feel like today feels like the first day I am using the internet ever for whatever reason. I don't know what's happening. Why?
Yeah, and to give some context as Paige gets this set up, so the Sacs Emerging Artist Award, it is a nomination process, and we are actually just about to launch those nomination forms within the next month or so. So you can nominate your friends or other colleagues that you admire. And it is a process where we have jurors then go through and score all of our applicants. And this year we're actually also reviewing all those eligibility guidelines to make them a little bit more inclusive and accessible to our larger international audience. So definitely keep an eye out for those. And it's a really great opportunity to receive an award that includes a package of a spot in the upcoming conference, whether virtual or in person, fingers crossed in person. And then you also get an honorarium and a virtual exhibition and digital catalog. So there's lots of opportunities to share your work and your processes, and it's a great way to meet folks. So hopefully you all can apply.
Yeah, and I think maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like there is an archive on the GAS website of like past Sacs Emerging Artists. So like, I don't remember how far back this award goes, but there's definitely people whose names are on there that you're gonna recognize.
I have a question about that. Does the person being nominated need to be a student or just an emerging artist?
That is a great question, and you do not. I'm gonna get the word for word because I don't. I feel
like they're not. They can't be a student. It has to be post-student or post.
Yeah, so that's also something we're currently working to like reevaluate. But I can let you know, you do not need to be enrolled, or you cannot be enrolled in a degree granting program. But there's no requirement for a degree in and of itself.
Is there a requirement for how long you've been practicing?
Yes. So that just needs to be that you have been working in glass for 12 years or less, and that you cannot be in a degree granting program. So then you can already be working with glass for 12 years or less and have a degree, not have a degree, be in between. That is open.
And there's all these different guidelines too, as to like what constitutes an emerging artist. Like I just applied for something, and when I was like doing the math in my head, I was like, oh, I'm over their requirement. But then I read their thing, and it said does not include years in school, which like took me back down. Like if I took out my like past couple years in grad school or whatever, it took me back down to the amount of time that made me eligible. So I don't know I don't know how we're reevaluating it, but I feel like there's some flexibilities within that wording. I don't know. Hopefully I didn't just make that more confusing.
Yeah, definitely stay tuned, and that should be confirmed within the next month.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Awesome. Well, let's get started. We'll start with, this is the one from, these are the 2021 Sachs Emerging Artists. So Bree Chesler, Morgan Gilbreth, and Aaron Hoffman. We probably won't get through all of them, but we'll start with Bree and see where we're at.
My Sachs Emerging Artist presentation. I'm an interdisciplinary artist focusing on sculptural installation and design. I'm currently living and working in Seattle, Washington, where I work as a glassblower, designer, and artist. My story doesn't start in Seattle. I actually grew up on the other side of the country in a place called Jupiter Farms, Florida. As you can see, the area is really rural, overgrown swampland, very Jurassic Parky. Living here is what really developed my affinity for forms found in nature and the carnality of desire. I found refuge within this wild landscape. And on quite the opposite side of the spectrum, I was also still living in South Florida, where sex sells and beauty is totally focused on the body. And so these were the two dynamics I was dealing with. Being faced with these two really different perspectives and definitions of beauty made me curious about what similarities I could find between these two juxtaposing worlds. And this really built the conceptual foundation for my current work, drawing from the wild and erotic character of the natural environment while focusing on concepts of beauty and desire. By combining forms found in botany and biology, I try and create sculptures that almost flirt with the audience, which you'll see examples of later in my presentation. As much of an impression as Florida left on me, I never felt like it was home. And I did everything in my power to get out of there when I was 18. I received a scholarship to the Kansas City Art Institute, where I ended up doing my undergraduate studies in the sculpture department. And I was really drawn to this program because of their focus on foundry and metal fabrication. But I was always known for my material exploration. I wasn't actually introduced to glass until much later on in my academic career. I was always making molds in the basement of the ceramics department, which I totally shouldn't have been in. I wasn't a ceramics major. And so, of course, one of the professors, George Timmock, took notice of me. And instead of kicking me out, he became interested in what I was doing and what I wanted to achieve. And after talking to me, he invited me into his class, which was a glass fusing elective. And George really let me run wild. He gave me full access to the material and the studio. And this is really where I started learning about what glass could do. This was the first glass piece I ever made. And I ended up taking this elective multiple times. And eventually, George took me aside and told me about a place called Pilchuck Glass School, kind of adding a jab in at the end that I shouldn't even bother applying because only really talented glass artists get in there, knowing fully well that I could not deny a challenge. And so I ended up applying and went that summer, taking my first hot glass class with Matt Escooky, which was a flame working class. And it was a glimpse into working with this molten media and the community that surrounded it that I hadn't really had yet. And I wasn't necessarily satisfied with my material relationship as an artist when I was in school with metal. I found it really abrasive in comparison to the type of organic work I was making. But glass was so sensual and intimate, it really made sense to me. So after that summer, I went back to school, finished out my undergraduate studies, not having any access to hot glass, but continuing my exploration in fusing. And this is what came out of that. It's installation that I did in collaboration with another student, Chelsea Lynn, and it highlighted the patterning that I was using in my glass work at the time. So after graduating, I ended up moving back to Florida to help take care of my mom. And it wasn't in my plan. I had a lot of dreams and ideas of what I was going to do after I graduate, but that just wasn't reality. And so I was still making work. It was really weird and grotesque and not glass at all. But there was something I really enjoyed about it. And I missed the entrancing quality of glass. I really felt like that was lacking in my work. And I wanted to figure out a way to combine my aesthetic in my glass work with this more grotesque kind of sculptural work I had started focusing on. This was another piece from that time. And so I was struggling working 3 jobs, 80 plus hours a week. And I had a boss who would always say to me, if you want to make glass, what are you doing here? Which I always took as an insult. And eventually, instead of taking it as an insult, I decided to take it as a piece of advice. And I applied to Pilchuck. A few weeks later, before I found out whether I had been accepted, I ended up getting in a really bad car accident. And as I was recovering, I was going through my email and found my acceptance letter to Pilchuck telling me I received a scholarship to a hot shop class that summer. I was overjoyed and totally devastated at the same time, not knowing if I could attend because I had gotten some pretty serious back injuries during the accident. I knew I needed to go. I just had a feeling that it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up, and I wouldn't have been able to go without the scholarship. And so I just decided I was going to be smart about what I could really be capable of with my injuries in the hot shop. And I had an amazing instructor that summer, Nika Dimitrovic, and an equally amazing class to learn alongside of. And as the class progressed, I realized that I really needed to be a part of this community of Washington, and that I really needed to dedicate myself to this medium, that I couldn't wait anymore. So I returned to Florida. I got my mom settled and I moved out to Seattle a few months later. I'm incredibly grateful for all the people that supported me that I met that summer, who allowed me to stay in their homes, crash on their couches as I navigated my way into this crazy glass world. And so after about 6 months of working other jobs, I ended up getting offered a job at a production glass studio kind of by chance. The girl I was living with at the time had been offered the job and couldn't take it. And so I was told if I show up before 11 a.m., I would have the job. Showed up, got the job and ended up being a hot shop setup assistant. So I cut sheet glass, prepped marini, and assisted glass blowers really with whatever they needed. And working in production was really my glass education. I started working at the very bottom, worked my way up to a production designer for products, and then ended up talking my way onto the floor. So when I became a product designer, I negotiated as part of my deal for letting the studio use my designs that I wanted hot shop time after hours so that I could really focus on the material and learn, work on my hand skills, and become more of an asset to the company. And so they agreed, and I ended up staying after work every day, literally every day. The owners used to joke that I should just get an RV and park it up in the parking lot and live there because of how much I was at work. And I don't work at that production studio anymore. I actually got offered a job last year, which I'm really excited about, with Artful Ashes, which is a different production company where we make memorials for people. And I find that really rewarding. And so it's nice to be able to kind of balance out working in a production hot shop and making something meaningful for people. Throughout all this, I met my two best friends, Jessie and Minhee England. I didn't know it at the time, but these two people were going to become a huge force of support and creativity in my life. And Minhee and I ended up starting a business together called Liquid Lush to help us both bring in income as a way to finance and support our own studio projects. And having a business really taught me a lot about being an artist, working with customers, and how to work with someone else, how to sustain myself. For Minhee and I to have a cohesive brand, we both needed to create a visual language that we could easily replicate within our varied skill sets. And so we're always designing with the other person in mind. And I think that's really interesting. Liquid Lush also allows me to keep my hands busy and my ideas flowing when I'm not necessarily feeling the most motivated in my own studio. And I find that really nice as well. The one thing I never did through all of this was stop applying to things. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. I really struggled. I got a lot of rejections, and a lot of people looked at me like I was crazy because I was investing all of my time and energy into making this work that I wasn't showing anywhere. But I kept going because I knew that I needed to push myself and keep learning and just have a reason to stay motivated. And so I challenged myself to building a portfolio solely for applying to different opportunities so that I could feel like I had a better chance. And so these are some of the pieces that I created. And I want to go back and bring up those more grotesque sculptures I brought in the beginning and remind you about how I said I wanted to combine that with my glass. So this is where that started to happen, and stuff started to get really weird, and I liked it. Bitch, or being in total control of him or her, was in response to some things I was going through in 2017. And it was when the women's marches were really in full effect. And I was the only female working at the production glass studio I was at the time. And it was just kind of my reaction to the experience I was having as a woman with my sexuality and gender kind of impeding on my success. Uh, and I decided to reclaim a slur commonly used towards women as the title, and make it into something that was strong, taking the literal definition of bitch, female dog, and combining it with a piece of the female anatomy as a play on words, while actually also commenting on the stereotype of women in authority positions. Crux is about the disintegration of our own desires, and its eroded surface is kind of a visual interpretation of that journey to rock bottom. And it is totally balanced on the toe, which emphasizes the fragility of the piece, but also the gravity of something being weighed down just ever so gently on this one point about to fall over. Weight, this piece is about being a voyeur to a loved one's death and the vulnerability and fragility of life, the kind of everlasting residue that love can have on someone. And it has an active rust patina, which means it still corrodes and eats away at the surface at the same time. This is Succulents, and it's about the botany of desire and the natural impulse to reproduce. So this sculpture is also balanced on a single point on the nipple of a breast, and its whimsical nature is kind of flirtatious and comical, mimicking a lot of the feelings we all have when we become sexually self-aware. I really like this piece. Prick. This is inspired by a kind of love and desire that can consume and drain an individual. The form is loosely based on a tick, and as the viewer approaches it and gets closer, the more their own image is engulfed and warped within the reflective surface. So these were all kind of smaller experiments where I was trying to figure out how I really wanted to combine all these different materials I was working with. You know, I was still trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to get out of this process and aesthetic, and how to translate my ideas to my audience while still highlighting my use of glass. In 2018, so after about 3 years of blowing glass consistently at the production studio, I saw a call for a glass-focused show at the Bellevue Arts Museum. And I applied fully expecting not to get it because I knew of all the talent and competition, specifically in the Pacific Northwest. So I went all out on my application. I was just kind of like, well, I'm going to do it. What do I got to lose? Probably not going to get it anyway. And to my surprise, they accepted my proposal, and I was so excited and completely terrified because I had never made work on this scale, never made work for a museum, and I was still learning about glass. I didn't really know how to fabricate any of this. And so it was a lot to take on. I knew that the whole glass community in Washington, maybe even in all of the Pacific Northwest, was going to see my work up close and personal. And that was a lot of pressure for me. That was a lot of people that I wanted to impress. And so I knew that this was really the moment for me to show what I had brewing inside of me over all the years while I was learning. And I was so nervous to show the glass community my mixed media methods because I didn't want them to see it as a distasteful sentiment to the history of this material. And, I needed to stay true to myself and what I envisioned for this piece. And I ended up getting great feedback from the community and the public. And it really fueled me to keep exploring these methods and aesthetic and making work in this way. And a lot of the way I use scrap material in my work developed as I made this installation. I funded the creation of this solely myself. And so I had to be smart and thrifty about where to get the material. And as I was working in production, I saw all this stuff just go to waste because it was not good enough quality for the studio to use. And so I started collecting it. And over time, I realized how much this was in line with the conceptual foundations of my work, focusing on excess and desire. And I was taking what was undesired by someone and giving it this new identity and even elevating it and putting it in a museum as a piece of fine art. And I thought that was really an interesting dialogue for me as the maker to kind of have with my work. And this work is pretty big. It's 8 feet wide by 10 feet tall. So it is a large scale installation. And so making this piece, I was trying to date a lot at the time, and it was kind of my first real dive into dating since college. And so I was really inspired by my experiences of sex culture that I hadn't really been awakened to yet. And it was exploring the more negative aspects of sexual obsession and desire, focusing on concepts of the feminine while juxtaposing luxury with affliction. And I attempted to create an installation that kind of drew the audience in, and the closer they looked, it revealed these little erotic forms and elements on closer examination. And the piece is about challenging the feminine identity and confronting the viewer with this more grotesque nature of desire. It's meant to have almost an infectious quality to its aesthetic, virally growing from the architecture. And so as this show at the Bellevue Arts Museum came to a close, I got more exciting news that I had been accepted as an emerging artist in residence at Pilchuck Glass School. And I could finally focus on glass with all of my energy and explore ways of making that I didn't necessarily have access to at home. And so this opportunity really changed my life and changed the work I was making. I think it just really allowed me to develop on some ideas that I hadn't had the time to. I highly recommend it to anyone considering applying. And the group of people I met while I was at this residency are amazing, incredibly talented, very willing to share ideas and techniques. And it was definitely a special group of people that will stick with me forever. So, this residency allowed me to start a series of work that I have slowly been finishing since I've left. And it's a deeper exploration into the aesthetic and concepts that I was focused on in Fun, Flirty, and Festering. But I wanted to push it farther, focusing more on the relationship between the 2D and 3D in a way that activated pattern and form. I spent a lot of time in the hot shop before my residency because I knew that was the one studio I wouldn't really have access to while I was there. And so I brought a lot of blanks with me, knowing that I wanted to work in the cold shop and carve, experimenting with manipulating the blown forms outside of the hot shop. So this is some of the pieces I was working on while I was there. And I did a lot of different things. And you can see it's all kind of bits and pieces, nothing's really fully completed. And that was my plan. I wanted to go in and just kind of create this foundation of the series for me to continue working on once I left. The summer before this residency, I had taken a class at Pilchuck with Sarah Gilbert and Yara Sarah, learning the basics of engraving. And so that's really what I was trying to expand on with the cold working processes while I was there. And this experience taught me so much. It taught me so much about myself and my work, and I felt like I was floundering a little bit before I went. And by the time I walked away, I was filled with this new confidence in myself and my work that is so valuable to have as an artist. And at the same time, Laura Donifer reached out to me on social media. I had never met her at the time. She started to support me and send me images for inspiration and give me guidance in art and life, anything really. And it was amazing to have someone reach out to me and reassure me that I was growing in the right direction. And we continued to develop a friendship, which we still have today. She still mentors me. And I'm bringing it up because I found out later that she discovered my work through this residency. So never doubt how sending in one application or saying yes to one opportunity can change your life in numerous ways. Not only did I walk away with a new understanding of my own work and the direction I wanted to go in, but I came out with lifelong friends, totally new knowledge base, and a whole new series to work on. So it's really valuable just to put yourself out there. Bruised Brew was the first piece I completed after my residency. And it's about trying to love someone who's too wounded to love back. The piece is visually inspired by bruised fruit or viscera from the body. And the process of making these forms is actually really abrasive and erosive, almost as if I am bruising or wounding the surface of the glass, leaving visual lacerations and kind of mimicking that conceptual inspiration behind the work itself. This piece is currently available at Habitat Galleries. And 2020 was a weird one for us all. I slowed down after finishing this piece and let myself process a lot of things, art related or not. And I had been incredibly fortunate to receive the Chihuly Gardens and Glass Scholarship to help fund my studio practice and finish the series that I had started at Pilchuck during my residency. So that's how I've been able to continue my work through pandemic. But I did have a lot of opportunities put on hold. I still made things consistently, but they were all kind of bits and pieces, and I was just slowly developing my work. I wasn't really finishing anything. I was doing a lot of applying and researching, and it ended up paying off, which brings me to what's happening now. In 2020, I was also lucky enough to receive the Halberg Fellowship at Pilchuck Glass School with Katie Hancock, Sarah Terry, Minhee England, and Julia Chamberlain. Some of these ladies I knew before we applied together, and some of them I actually met through the application process. And we're a really dynamic group. And it's been really interesting collaborating and working together thus far. And if you don't know what the Halberg Fellowship is, it is focused around collaboration. And so that is why we applied. We will be attending the residency this summer at Pilchuck Glass School, which I'm very excited about. And we recently got an opportunity with Pilchuck Gallery in downtown Seattle to have an exhibition. So we decided to have 2 back-to-back exhibitions. Our current exhibition, Voices in Glass, is highlighting each of us as individuals, and it's been curated in conjunction with the secondary show, which will feature our collaborative installation. So in the current show, Voices in Glass, this is the piece that I have in. It's titled Squirm, and the imagery is inspired by a rotten peach, 2 fleshy halves kind of encase this wormy center. Squirm investigates the switch in perspective when something sweet goes sour, when attraction turns into repugnance. The title Squirm is a play on words. It sounds like worm, giving insight into what these central forms kind of represent, while at the same time making you think of the physical action of squirming, which can be a reaction to both pleasure and distaste. So, like the concept and imagery, the title encapsulates the feeling of being entwined by lust and loathing, and the realization that what you have once desired has been tainted. So it hangs at head height so that the worm-like forms are kind of exploding towards the audience at head height. And the 2 fleshy halves are raised so that the center is recessed a little bit, making you feel just ever so slightly sucked in.
So I'm going to stop it there just because I'm looking at time. But that was one of 3 sex emerging artists from this year, Bree Tressler. Cool.
Yeah, and I will also just note, so all 3 artists, they each have their separate lectures, but we put them together in that one video. So the whole rest of that time is not just Bree talking, it's also the other 2 winners.
Yeah, and I felt like she was like about to wrap up, which is why I was letting it run, but I was like, okay, maybe this is going on a little bit longer than I'm anticipating, so I just wanted to stop for time in case there was any discussion that anyone wanted to have.
It was great to hear her journey and to see the development of the path. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of things within the past like 3 years or so just started to like fall into place for like Bree in particular. Like I know Morgan, who I think would have been like the next video, and like she has a very different journey. And I know she did the pill check residency like maybe close to like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. So it's interesting to see like the paths everyone takes. And one of the things I liked about Bree's lecture is how transparent she is about her journey and like getting rejections or like thinking that she wasn't gonna get something and just kind of going all in for an application. And it seems like it seems to be really paying off. Cool. Well, since we have like just 1 minute left, I guess I'll talk really briefly about some of the stuff we're planning for next year. It's still really early. We're taking a hiatus from the student meetups and hope to return in August or September. But in the past, we've done studio tours, gallery visits, artist lectures. We've done some business practice stuff, and we're looking to do some of the same. We're also expanding the student representative position and what that looks like. So we will be bringing on an international student rep. He'll be joining us starting in October. So hopefully too, we'll be making connections with more of the world and not so much just North America. Yeah, but we're always open to suggestions. Some of our programming for the student meetup this year was actually brought to us by 2 graduate students at RIT, Ingjin and Renoy, and they proposed programming that focused on people who lived in other countries but wanted to study in America. And that was something, then we basically just became this platform that allowed them to bring the content that they wanted to see into the world. So if you do, I'm going to drop the student rep email in the chat. So if you do end up having any questions or you end up having a great suggestion for some sort of programming, feel free to email me and we'll see how we can facilitate that or how we can, help if there's just any questions. Jenna, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so in addition to the next round of student meetups we're going to have starting later this summer or early fall, there is also the Facebook group that we created over the past year that we'd absolutely welcome. If you have any questions, you can feel free to just ask it there and get a response from the community. Or Paige and I are regularly putting different opportunities that are available. So if you haven't already, check out the Facebook group. And as we get ready for our next conference, Tacoma 2022, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for students, however you identify as a student, including research presentations and scholarships, and we hope to bring back our work exchange. And I also highly encourage you all to take a look at the proposal guidelines and see if you would be willing to present. It'd be great to hear voices from the whole spectrum of artists in the glass community. So thanks for being here.
There's also, I'm going to piggyback that real quick before we leave. There's also the student exhibition and the student scholarship, like that is so big, and it is actually like a pretty generous amount of money that can help you get to the conference. And next year we're planning in person in Tacoma to celebrate our 50th anniversary. And student membership is now pay what you can. So if you're a student, you can pay as little as $5 for an annual membership. So it's super affordable. And you get so many benefits out of that will get you a discounted conference fee, but it also gets you into like our database of like opportunities, not just gas opportunities, but like maybe you're a student about to graduate. There's a really good database of like jobs being posted or different opportunities for other exhibitions, stuff that's not just gas, but is glass adjacent. So it's really worth being a part of the organization. So yeah, hopefully we'll one day actually get to see each other in person and not just in these digital platforms. But in the meantime, this has been a great way to facilitate our community. Cool.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is a small, intimate group, but keep an eye out for I guess season 2 of the student meetups coming to you in a couple months.
Yeah.